The movie begins in a tranquil suburban neighborhood where we see a young girl suddenly sprinting down the street. She's glancing over her shoulder, clearly running from something or someone. Her pace quickens as she crosses to the other side of the road, her panic evident. Finally, she reaches her home where her father steps outside, concerned. "Is everything okay?" he asks, but she doesn't stop. Without saying a word, she rushes past him, grabs her car keys, and drives off. The girl drives for hours, constantly checking her rearview mirror. Her erratic glances suggest she's still being pursued. Eventually, she reaches a secluded beach and pulls over. Trembling, she calls her family, her voice breaking as she tells them how much she loves them and begs them not to worry about her. After hanging up, she sits on the beach, staring into the darkness, as if bracing herself for something inevitable. The next morning, the girl is found dead on the same beach. Her lifeless body is horrifyingly twisted, her leg bent at an unnatural angle, a grim testament to a violent end. In the following scene, we're introduced to Jay, a young woman enjoying a swim in her backyard pool. Her friends are inside watching a movie, but Jay seems distracted. She's preparing for a date later that evening. Soon, she meets Hugh, her date, at a local movie theater. While waiting for the film to start, Hugh becomes visibly uneasy, staring at a strange woman in a yellow dress standing near the entrance. He leans over and whispers to Jay, asking if she can see the woman. Confused, Jay looks but sees no one. Hugh, clearly disturbed, abruptly suggests they leave, citing a vague excuse about feeling unwell. The next morning, Jay confides in her friends about the date. She admits she likes Hugh and is eager to see where their relationship might lead. That evening, the two go out again, sharing a quiet dinner at a restaurant. However, as they chat, a mysterious figure approaches Hugh from behind, unnoticed by Jay. Later, the couple drives to a secluded spot where they share an intimate moment in Hugh's car. But just as Jay begins to relax, Hugh unexpectedly attacks her, pressing a chloroform-soaked cloth to her face. She struggles but quickly loses consciousness. Jay awakens in an abandoned parking lot, tied to a wheelchair. Hugh stands nearby, visibly distressed. He assures her he won't hurt her and begins to explain. He reveals that he's being followed by a relentless entity, a supernatural curse passed on to him through intercourse. This entity, he says, takes on human forms and will stop at nothing to reach its target. The only way to escape it is by passing the curse to someone else. He warns Jay that if the entity kills its target, it will revert to the previous person in the chain. To prove his claims, Hugh wheels Jay to the edge of the building, where she sees a naked woman walking towards them with a blank, menacing expression. Hugh, visibly shaken, explains to Jay that this is the entity following him. He warns her again that the only way to escape it is to pass the curse by sleeping with someone else. If the entity catches her, it will kill her. Jay stares at the figure, frozen with fear, as the woman continues to get closer. Despite Hugh's warnings, Jay struggles against her restraints, yelling for help. Hugh quickly wheels her away from the edge and drives her back to her friend's house, leaving her in the front yard before speeding off. Jay's friends rush to her aid as soon as they find her. They notice her shaken state and call the police. Jay tries to explain what happened, but the story sounds too unbelievable. The police investigate but find no trace of Hugh, as he had been using a fake identity. Jay's friends try to comfort her, but she remains deeply disturbed by what she has seen. The next day at school, Jay sits quietly in her classroom trying to make sense of everything. Suddenly, she spots an old woman wearing a nightgown slowly walking toward her from the hallway. The woman appears out of place, and none of the other students seem to notice her. Jay's heart races as she realizes it might be the entity. Panicking, she quickly grabs her bag and runs out of the classroom. As she makes her way through the hallway, she looks back and sees the same woman following her, step by step. Terrified, Jay runs to a nearby store where her friends Kelly and Paul work. She tells them everything, but they find it hard to believe her story. Paul, who has a crush on Jay, offers to stay over at her house that night to make her feel safe. Enjoying the vibe? Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and join the adventure. Don't forget to ring the bell so you're always in on the action. Your support fuels the journey. Thank you. Encouraged by his bravery, the rest of the group also decides to stay with her. That evening, Jay struggles to sleep. Her mind is filled with images of the entity, and every sound feels like a threat. She sneaks downstairs and finds Paul watching a movie. He tries to reassure her that everything will be okay, but she remains on edge. Suddenly, they hear the sound of breaking glass coming from the kitchen. Paul cautiously goes to investigate but finds nothing. Feeling uneasy, he heads upstairs to wake the others, leaving Jay alone. Jay nervously checks the kitchen herself and is horrified to see a scarred woman limping toward her. She screams and runs upstairs, slamming the bedroom door shut behind her. Her friends gather around trying to calm her down, but she is visibly shaken and begins to accept that the curse is real. One of her friends decides to open the door, revealing an empty hallway. Jay starts to feel a sense of relief, thinking it was just her imagination. However, her relief is short-lived when a freakishly tall man suddenly emerges from the darkness. Screaming, Jay escapes out the bedroom window and climbs onto the balcony. In the next scene, Jay rides her bike to a local park, trying to catch her breath. Her friends eventually catch up to her and attempt to calm her down. Realizing how terrified Jay is, they decide to track down Hugh to get more answers about the curse. They search for clues and eventually find his old address. When they arrive, they discover the place is abandoned. Undeterred, they search through old photographs and documents left behind, which lead them to Hugh's high school. There, they uncover his real name, Jeff, along with his current address. Wasting no time, the group heads to his house to confront him. After hearing Jeff's explanation about the curse, Jay and her friends are left in a state of shock. Realizing they can't just ignore this terrifying reality, the group decides they need to get as far away as possible to buy some time. One of the friends suggests going to a family-owned lake house a few hours away. Once they arrive at the lake house, the group tries to settle in and distract themselves with lighthearted activities. For a while, it feels like the curse might be far behind them. They enjoy swimming, playing games, and joking around, giving Jay a brief respite from her constant fear. However, the tranquility doesn't last long. One evening, as the sun sets, Jay senses something off. She glances nervously over her shoulder and spots a strange figure slowly approaching from the woods. The figure is barely visible in the dim light, but its steady, deliberate movements leave no doubt it's the entity. Before Jay can warn the others, the figure grabs her hair, pulling her violently backward. She screams and her friends rush to her aid, but only she can see the entity. Paul attempts to intervene, blindly swinging a chair in the direction of Jay's attacker. To everyone's horror, the chair shatters midair, revealing that the entity has some physical form despite being invisible to most. However, this only angers the entity, which shoves Paul aside effortlessly. Jay manages to free herself and sprints toward a nearby shed, with her friends following close behind. They slam the door shut and lock it, hoping the entity won't be able to break through. But within moments, loud bangs echo through the shed as the entity relentlessly tries to get in. Suddenly, a small hole forms near the bottom of the door. As Jay cautiously approaches to see what's happening, a terrifying face, disfigured and unrecognizable, peers through. The entity has morphed its shape again, this time to fit through the gap. Jay's panic reaches its peak. She rushes to the back door of the shed, bursts out and jumps into her car. With her friends yelling for her to stop, she drives off at full speed, desperate to get away. Her erratic driving leads her into a cornfield, where she crashes. The scene cuts to Jay waking up in a hospital bed surrounded by her friends. She's bruised, but otherwise okay, though her mental state is far from stable. In the hospital, Jay's paranoia deepens as she fears the entity will come for her at any moment. Her friends try to reassure her, but Jay knows it's only a matter of time before it finds her again. Desperate for a solution, she finally agrees to pass the curse on, hoping it will give her a chance to survive. Greg, one of the friends, volunteers, claiming he doesn't believe in the curse and just wants to help Jay feel safe. That night, Greg and Jay sleep together in her hospital room, transferring the curse to him. At first, it seems like their plan worked. Greg remains skeptical of the whole situation, teasing Jay about her fears. But things take a dark turn a few days later when Jay, watching from her window, notices someone breaking into Greg's house through the front window. She tries calling him, but there's no answer. Fearing the worst, She rushes over to his house. Inside, Jay finds the entity in the form of Greg's mother, banging on his bedroom door. Greg, completely unaware of the danger, opens the door, only to be attacked and killed in a gruesome manner. Jay watches helplessly as the curse transfers back to her. Horrified, she flees the house and drives aimlessly for hours, desperate to escape the relentless entity. Eventually, Jay arrives at a secluded beach. She spots a group of young men in the distance and contemplates sleeping with them to pass the curse on again. But at the last moment, guilt and fear consume her, and she decides against it. Instead, she returns home, still haunted by the entity. Back at home, Paul offers to help Jay. He admits he has feelings for her and is willing to take the curse to protect her. But Jay, unwilling to let anyone else suffer because of her, refuses. Instead, she comes up with a plan to confront the entity and try to kill it once and for all. The group agrees and begins preparing for the ultimate showdown. They head to a nearby public swimming pool, bringing various electrical appliances to use as weapons. Jay acts as bait, sitting in the pool and waiting for the entity to arrive. When it finally does, the plan quickly goes awry. The entity starts throwing the electrical items into the water, attempting to electrocute Jay. She dives underwater to avoid the attacks, while her friends scramble to protect her. Paul tries shooting at the entity, guided by Jay's descriptions, but accidentally hits one of their friends in the leg. Finally, someone throws a blanket over the entity, making it visible to everyone. Paul takes aim and shoots it in the head, causing it to fall into the pool. Believing the nightmare is over, Jay starts swimming toward the edge of the pool, but the entity suddenly resurfaces and grabs her foot, trying to drag her under. Paul fires more shots, hitting the entity multiple times. It finally lets go of Jay and sinks to the bottom of the pool. As the group gathers around, they notice a strange red liquid spreading in the water. Although the entity seems defeated, there's an unsettling sense that it's not truly gone. In the final moments, Jay and Paul sleep together, transferring the curse to him. The next day, Paul is seen driving through town, scanning the streets for someone to pass the curse on to. He slows down near a group of strangers, leaving the audience with an eerie sense of uncertainty as the film ends.